Good afternoon, welcome to our webinar, which is Demystifying ISO 9001-2015. My name's Jude, and I'll be hopefully guiding you through a thrilling experience over the next 40 minutes or so. If you're new to NQA, we are a global certification body, and if you're not with us already, then it's definitely worth checking out our website and seeing what standards that we do offer. Obviously, it's the core three of 9, 14 and 45, and the ever-growing information security sector, rather. And the people at sales are always happy to have a chat with you about that. I'm not here to sell, so I won't pressure you into any of that kind of stuff, but we will dive straight into the webinar itself. So I'm the Technical and Projects Manager for NQA, and I live in Risk and Regulatory, which is a fascinating element of the business, and it means that I also get to internal audit NQA globally and see what we're up to and make sure that we're actually delivering what we should do in compliance with our regulator, which is UCAS. So today I'm going to walk you through how to explain 9001 to employees, because it's a really difficult stepping stone, particularly if you're new to certification, or if you have new starters, or even if you've had the experience of old school assessing, shall we say. And then we'll also look at methodologies and engagement for the employees as well. So starting on our journey, little quote to lift our spirits: whether it's the best of times or the worst of times, it's the only time we've got. And that's relevant to your system. So no matter what stage your management system is at the moment, it's what you've got. Celebrate it, work with it, and hopefully at the end of this webinar you'll be able to go back to your employees and ensure they've got a better understanding of what quality management is. So a document you will have heard of is 9001-2015. So that's the standard that you'll get certificated to. But there is another document, which is ISO 9000-2015, which provides really all of the definitions behind what's in that standard and is your little guiding path, I suppose, as to what the terminology means within 9001-2015. So let's start with the basics, because sometimes people get a little bit confused about what quality management is. The definition from ISO 9000-2015 is that it's a degree to which a set of inherent characteristics of an object fulfills requirements. And the first time you look at that, it doesn't really mean a lot. And what we've got to bear in mind is that all of the ISO standards are international, and they are to cover every sector and every industry to do with quality management, or wants to implement that management system, I should say. And the management part of it's quite easy. So it's a coordinated activities to direct and control an organisation. So an organisation can be anything really, can't it? It can be a business, it can be a sports club, it can be your home. So that maybe the difficult part to understand at this point, and what people get stuck on, is quality itself. So I want to translate this into real life a little bit for you. So we'll keep the definition up the top there, but 9000 itself defines a characteristic that's physical, sensory, behavioural, temporal, ergonomic, or functional. Does that help us out in what quality means in quality management? Well, let's think of it in terms of your scope. So if, for example, you have a scope on your certificate that says supply and distribution, then what it might mean is that you're looking at the physical aspect in terms of transport. You might be looking at the sensory aspect in terms of, and this is a silly example, but you wouldn't want in your warehouse a diesel HGV with the engine turned on, pumping out fumes whilst you're having staff pack boxes or stock onto there, for example. From a behavioural perspective, you might not want to be saying, yeah, we can carry 5 tons on our truck, when in fact you can only legally carry 1 ton. You don't want to tell customers that you'll be there at 1 o'clock on Tuesday, but actually you're there at 5 o'clock on Friday. And when you think about the staff, office staff, for example, or even your production staff, you're always looking for their safety. Have you got the right seats? Have you got the right PPE? It's all really pretty basic stuff. And is it fit for purpose as well as part of the functional aspect? And that's where the requirement comes in. So it's a need or expectation that is stated, generally, implied, or obligatory. So hopefully that breaks it down a little bit, but I want to break it down even further for you, because even explaining that to somebody who's possibly thinking they've never had anything to do with quality management before, that still might sound a little bit complex. So the good news is everybody lives in a walking, talking quality management system. So you interact with these characteristics every day, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in, what sector, what your job role is. It doesn't matter if you work from home, in an aircraft, flying about, or in a premises somewhere. You have these things in your home, and that's why it's important, okay? So a physical aspect, whether you operate a hoover, a washing machine, or a power tool, part of what you're doing relates to a quality management system in some respect. If you buy cleaning products, there's a process for using that cleaning product. When you cook, there's a process of how you put ingredients together, how you use that physical aspect. Maybe if it's, you know, a blender or a kettle or something that goes with it. Behavior is important in absolutely everything. So any relationship that you have, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's work colleagues, it's relatable. If you have the torment of a school run, then you will understand the temporal aspect, or meeting doctor's appointments, dentist appointments, friends down at you know, the gym or the pub, wherever you might meet them. If you choose a bed, car, or a desk for your children to do the homework on, or even yourself for your home office, you're automatically considering these ergonomic factors. And the functional aspect, again, choosing a car, cooker, replacing a boiler, or buying a new laptop, you're already taking these characteristics into account in your everyday life, and you have an expectation of what that reasonable requirement or obligation should be from it. So looking at it again and thinking back to that definition and all of these things which we all use every single day, let's think a little bit more in context of an operational management system. So anybody who enters your home, we can say that they're an interested party. You recognise that term, interested party, from your business. It's in section 4 of 9001. You have to consider the needs of the interested parties. You have to consider what extent those needs are met. And as just a little paragraph on its own, that can be a little bit scary and often not translated through to everybody in the business. However, you're already doing it. As an average person, you're already having that interested party interaction. And there's an implied obligation that if somebody comes over to your house, that you probably have clean clothes on. If you can make them a brew, you're going to do it in a nice clean mug. If you're going to be late and not there when they arrive, you're going to tell them. You want to provide comfortable seating for them, and you also want to have confidence that your boiler's serviced, that your electrics are good. You know, people aren't coming to your home automatically thinking, you know, your house is going to blow up or have some sort of event. So thinking of it in those really simple terms, breaking that statement down, everybody is operating a quality management system. It's just that they don't know it, and we don't think about it in those simple terms. And it is literally that simple. So what you probably want to know is, how does this help in the workplace? Well, if we think of it in terms of what we do in terms of tasks, it's nothing massively different to what we do at home. The difference is that you get paid for it. And on the behavioural aspect, you'll probably find that your interactions with people should be slightly different. But a misconception about all of this is that everything that we do is down to process, and it comes down to a simple input and a simple output, and there's a little task often in between to do that. It's the same as at work. So let's think of a shopping list, for example. A shopping list is created. The task to do that is to establish what is required for your list and where are you going to get it from, and then the output will be that the stock is replenished. How on earth does that relate to 9001? Dead simple. Well, in order to know what you need for your shopping list, you kind of have to do a little internal audit. You have to go through your cupboards and think, right, well, I'm deficient in washing up liquid, so therefore I may be deficient in something else, so I will go and find. And then you might find, you know, somebody said they replaced something and they haven't, and you know, is that conforming? It's up to you to decide. You need to consider your resources. Where are you going to get the stock from? Have you got the funds to get the stock? Where's it reasonable to get to? You're going to have organisational knowledge. If you're not the one that creates the shopping list every single week, then do you have a good enough knowledge of what's required from that list? Externally provided processes and external providers. Well, in this instance, what we're thinking about is maybe supermarkets or grocery shops or your local shop. And that's where ISO can throw people slightly, because all of these factors in 9001, we're relating it to a shopping list. So the language is quite different, and how we get this across to people is really breaking that language down and turning it into real life. So if you put this across to people in simple terms, that this is what we're doing, job should be good. However, and we'll stick with this example, if you are the person that does the shopping list and you give that list to a household member and you say, right, well, you're not going to say anything because it's a list. So let's cut back on that one first of all. So you give them the list, and on the list is Jude's luxury shower gel, not coming to a shop near you, I assure you. And they returned with Jude's average great smelling shower gel instead. Well, obviously it's going to be a good choice because it's the Jude brand. However, what the shopper doesn't know is that you have an allergy to something in the average shower gel, and that's why you needed the luxury. That's why it was on the list. The reason I'm using this as an example is because on the face of it, it's a small thing. It's these small inconsistencies which happen in the business a lot, and it can get blown up out of proportion. And this is where people get a little bit nervous of, oh God, something's gone wrong. Well, it hasn't. In terms of ISO, this could be classed as a non-conformance, but what it doesn't mean is that anybody did anything wrong. Something has been missed from that particular process. So if you don't know, you can't implement it. And this is where it comes directly back into the commercial industry and world. What we think is a simple task and what we think is an obvious task is only obvious if you know it. And that's where process management definitely comes into this. And where, if you look within the clauses of the standard that are in that 9001 element there, such as resources, if you're doing shopping, it should be really easy, really, shouldn't it? All you've got to consider is, have you got the money to do it? 9001 doesn't tell us about that. It says, yes, you should have enough money to do things, or you should have enough resource to do things, but then it also talks about awareness, and it talks about competence, and it talks about control of information also, which is relevant even to this simple example of a shopping list. The shopper was not aware that you had an allergy. Was the shopper competent to conduct the shopping on your behalf? Arguably they were, they just weren't given the correct information perhaps, or, well, not correct information, they weren't given enough information. The organisational knowledge element that comes in, they clearly don't do the shopping every week or every month. So the shopper has got that organisational knowledge. So how do you pass that on? How do we make sure everybody's aware? We don't know the full story, but it could be a case if they went to a different shop. So looking at those externally provided processes and the products and the services And the information for external providers as well. Did they ask anybody in the shop, have you got Jude's luxury shower gel, or was it just the average great smelling shower gel? So something so small and so simple can cause some really great discussions, and this is quality management. So take it a little bit further, you're going to have to think about containment action for this as well. Well, the problem might be, depending on your process, if you were in my house and it was me that had done the shopping, my process would be, because I've got 3 dogs, I'm going to put all the shopping on the side in the kitchen and then ignore it for a bit and hope somebody else puts it away. So that creates another problem in itself, because if I decide to be helpful and break process and put it in the bathroom, the shower gel, and it gets used, then you would have no reason to check, would you? I suppose the bottle, because it's there, so I've caused an incident perhaps. If it gets left on the side, is it going to get checked before it goes upstairs? You know, there's all these little things. So again, it's this process management, following even the smallest things through, but doing it in such a way that is logical and relatable to the people using the process, because they'll be able to tell you whether that shower gel would likely go upstairs, or will actually know something else happens at this point. So it's simple, but it is in depth and it can be complex. But keep the language simple, and we should find a good process out of it. You might talk about how it came about, what was the root cause, you know, and have a conversation. What did you pick that up for? Well, your list said this, they didn't have it, so instead of coming back nothing, I got a substitution. Many reasons why things can not happen as you expect them to. And often a conversation is a good place to start, but you have to find that root cause. And sometimes this can feel a bit of an investigation for people, but a conversation is a great place to start. And then you have to come up with a corrective action as well. So it might be a case of, okay, well, next time I give you the shopping list, what I should do is give you a list of alternatives. And if that alternative is on the list, we could agree maybe you don't get it. And it's that simple. So now I've made it sound incredibly simple. You've got to ask the question, well, why doesn't this naturally translate through into the business? Why is it we've got an assessor coming in, they're going to look at everything in the business, they're going to rip us apart, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, it's going to be awful. Well, firstly, we're not providing reassurance and security for the auditees. Everything within 9001 is a natural process. If you look at section 4, it's discussing and considering the needs of other people. Are you compliant with legislation? Hopefully you are, but that's something that you would consider maybe without the use of an international standard. Are you able to stand up to an HSE inspection or an environmental inspection? Well, quality management does feed into that slightly, because you would be looking at these factors before you even consider getting ISO certification. Have you considered your employees? Hopefully you have. If you haven't, then it's one to look into. Have you considered your neighbours? Have you got the correct insurance? This is all that section 4 is asking you to do. And now it's asking you to consider within that legislation aspect, of course, have you considered climate change? Because this is a new thing that's coming out in case you were unaware. It also asks the leadership to look at themselves. So within the leadership, can you 100% say that everybody in the organisation knows their role and responsibility when it comes to quality management, or even just their role in general? And we need to provide reassurance and security, particularly with this element, because having confidence that you understand what you do and where your responsibility starts and ends is very reassuring for people, and it adds that layer of self-protection in certain aspects as well. Section 6 looks at planning, opportunities and risks. So even with our simple example of a shopping list, just to buy some shower gel, there was risk involved even in that. So the risk doesn't have to be physical when it comes to 9001. It can be financial. It can be a competitive risk. There's many, many things that you can consider. But what the auditor's not looking for is maybe a risk of a meteor falling out of the sky and destroying your premises. You don't want risk as a shopping list. You want it to be a natural, this is a real risk, because we could all think of the most bizarre things, but is it relevant, and is it actually valuing your time, noting every single possible one? And equally, if it is a valuable risk, the employees should probably know about it, because that will help stop them tripping over and exposing to a risk as well. So keeping it as real and relatable as possible is quite a good thing to do. Once you've got past these parts, and again, these are just elements of the standard, you'd be looking at section 7. So we had a little chat about that a couple of slides ago when we talked about resources and awareness. And these are huge factors why it doesn't naturally translate that what you're already doing in your business is quality management. So there's a lack of understanding. When we start using complex statements like the original definition that I gave at the beginning from 9000 2015, if you haven't got context to what it's for, it's very difficult to understand. So when you have somebody come into your business, whether you're leadership or middle management or a fabulous boots on the ground person, and start saying, have you done contract review? Have you done procurement? Have you done this? Have you checked your suppliers? These aren't things that you would naturally think about in those language terms. So your understanding is going to possibly feel a little bit off because it's not natural to you. So maybe building up a little bit about that understanding of, nobody's ever going to say to you in your home, did you procure a firm plastic transparent vessel, meaning have you bought some Tupperware? So and what you can do as well is ask the auditor, can you put this in simple terms? That doesn't make you sound daft. It doesn't make you sound like you don't know what you're talking about. It just clarifies what you're being asked. And it's really important to understand what you're being asked on an audit. And it's really important that your employees understand what they're being asked, because if they don't feel they understand, you start to panic and it becomes an experience that it shouldn't be. It should be enjoyable. You should have fun. You should be really ready to show off the great work that you're doing. People get scared as well. You start mentioning international standards, management systems. It's not something that you come across every day in terms of that language. So let's remove the language. That's an easy thing to do. So you can have an understanding, can't you, that we have a certificate, it's on the wall, we get audited every year by an external body, but we also have our own people that are going to help us with that, because they're going to do an internal audit. And it's not something to trip you up on. This is to help improve the shopping list situation. So you get the shower gel that you want. And it also makes sure you're not going to come out with a nasty rash. Maybe that's not a conversation to have with the employees in those terms. You've got to bring it down to something really, really simple to help them out. Often we can feel like we're not prepared for an audit because you don't know what's going to be asked all of the time. And if you're unsure, actually, am I doing the process right? Is this the process I'm meant to be following? Because I've just been doing this for years and someone's going to come and tell me it's wrong. The more prepared you are, the better that you will feel about quality management, and that goes straight back to understanding. If you don't understand it, you can't prepare for it. You're going to be scared of it. The longer you've worked in industry, equally, you may have had a poor experience with quality management. A few of the older standards used to be quite, well, a bit dictating of what you should do as a business and how you should run your business. but the newer standards aren't to that vein. It really, really puts across to the business owners and those in top management, this is your business. You need to run it how you see fit. At the same time, you need to conform to the international standard if you wish to have that certificate. So it's about turning it around, and maybe that's the job of the certification bodies as well. Interesting point. Uncertainty. Again, if it's a case of maybe your first certification, or you've not come across the terms of quality management, you don't know what that means, you're uncertain, a bit apprehensive, a little bit fearful again, and you need to provide that reassurance and that security that nothing terrible is going to happen if you get a non-conformance. And it comes back to you. So I'm going to guess we may have a few business leaders who are watching this particular webinar, and this is what you can do to assist people in understanding. First of all, you need to own the audit. So if you're the top management, you own the processes, you've set the roles and responsibilities, this is your audit. So if there's a non-conformance, if there's a finding, or if there's any feedback which requires you to do something, whoever's created the process isn't the person at fault, but they're maybe the person that needs to go back to that process and think, oh, okay, well, something's not worked there, so I need to tweak it, I need to find out a little bit more. But it's generally a case of nobody does anything malicious, it's just a fresh set of eyes, sees a different side of a process, or can see a gap in a process, which when you're doing something every day, it becomes quite natural to do certain things, and you can't see wood of the trees. You need to relate these processes back to real life again, so that people understand. I keep going back to my shopping list, but it's just the most simple way to explain it, really. You will have operational processes which are business critical that aren't simplistic, and those really may come down to work procedures. Are you able to operate the machinery correctly? Are you able to do X, Y, and Z correctly? And you need to prepare people with a thorough internal audit. There is absolutely nothing worse than an internal auditor coming through, looking at a few things, knowing the processes too well themselves, and then saying, yeah, okay, that's absolutely fine. Have a bit of confidence, and then an external auditor comes in and finds problem after problem after problem. So it can be a little bit of a contentious job. In some respect, it's difficult to point out to people that you work with, yeah, this process isn't working as well as it could do, and you need to come up with a way of fixing that. But honestly, by not giving that thorough, honest feedback in the audit about processes, and we must emphasize it is not the person, and you must get this across to people, a person is not being assessed, it is your processes that are being assessed. And it's so easy to get upset in these situations, and that's the importance of driving that home. It is a process that meets the international standard, not a person at all. So just because you like somebody, or maybe somebody's a little bit sensitive, that is not a reason to not give that person a thorough audit. In fact, it's a better reason to do that, because they need to have confidence when they sit in front of an external auditor. I actually know what I'm doing, and I know this process is okay because we've been through this, and we've done it to death, and I know my shopping list is absolutely fine. You also need to lead with positivity. So there's no good worrying about getting non-conformances or findings, because it's not life and death at all. If you know, some document control has gone askew, unless of course it's to do with a huge safety issue or anything of that nature, but it's rare that we would find anything like that anyway. You have to see it as a positive. If somebody is finding something, they're helping you improve, and we have to embrace that as a positive thing. And you know what? Treat your audits as a chance to absolutely show off what you can do. I'm not sure, we've got Charles on the line as well, actually, and I'm not sure, Charles, if is there a question? I think I can see a hand up.
So far, we only had one question on whether the slides will be made available after the webinar, which they will be. But yeah, no questions so far into the chat.
Ah, right, okay, yeah, sorry, I saw something flashing and wasn't sure what it was, and hoped it wasn't an urgent warning for something, because that would mean that, but it wouldn't be good, would it? Okay, so also as well, supporting process change is really important. So when you start talking to people in simple terms about their job and about how they use their processes, then what will happen is they will automatically talk back to you, because you're listening to them and you're taking on board what their thoughts are and an interest in what they do. And we should always do that, because what everybody does in that business is very important. Supporting those improvement processes and praising them actually opens people up to maybe learning a little bit more about what quality management is. If using the words quality management doesn't work in your business, don't use it. If using the words non-conformance does not work in your business, don't use it. Find a language base which suits everybody in the company, because when you get an external auditor to come out to see you, they are there to make sure that you comply with an international standard, and it is their job to find the evidence. You don't have to provide it on a tray for them. You don't have to make your system so aligned and heavily clause-based that it's practically a mirror of the international standard. They're trained, experienced people who come out to see you, and they should have the ability to look through what you're doing and think, all right, okay, so they've called it, well, I don't know, a positive improvement chart. That should be quite obvious that that maybe relates to you've had non-conformances, if you want to call it that, from the standards, and you're doing something about it. Management review, it's a term that companies often struggle with as well, because it doesn't mean anything in a normal everyday context, because you review things every day, you have meetings probably every day, you have conversations every day. So that formalized process is something that you probably do anyway, again, but it's just making sure that you go back to that standard and make sure that everything that's on your agenda that you are formally doing actually meets that section within there. So it's not a complicated rocket science, if you will, standard to follow. It's very logical. It's very easy. All you have to make sure is that your systems, your processes, are completely understandable for people. And that's where we find non-conformances generally. If somebody hasn't followed a process, or somebody hasn't been able to deliver on a process, and the root cause is generally misunderstanding when they provide that to us. So this is exactly what you can do to get that across to people. Good internal audit, own the audit, lead it with positivity, and take it back to a process, to a language people can understand. Support the improvement and use it as a pitch for yourselves. You know, people don't like audits. I can't understand it, because I really look forward to our audit. Every single year we get 3 weeks of our regulator coming in, and I'm sure they think I'm joking when I say it's like Christmas for me, because it's the only time in a year that anybody actually really dives into what we do as a department, and it's enjoyable because I can show off, this is what we do, this is how wonderful we are. And when they have suggestions, I see that as a value. Doesn't mean we always will implement them, but if someone can say, well, what you're doing is really good, but actually have you thought about this? I do go away and think about it and think, oh, actually, and then that sparks other ideas. So it's a really good opportunity. And the more that people are less scared and will engage, the more ideas that will be generated through your business. and hopefully more improvements can be driven, or even more ideas to improvements for your product or sales or whichever area you're in. So to conclude, it's not uncommon for people to be unsure about management systems, and hopefully with what we've discussed, you can see that that can be fixed. It's good basic communication, good basic understandings. Auditors often raise findings. So some companies will really embrace this, others will be a little bit worried, a little bit standoffish about it, but it's not the end of the world. All non-conformances mean are that there is an aspect of your process that does not show a compliance to an international standard. And it's a great opportunity to improve, because when you deep dive in that, what you'll be able to find is that, okay, we might be missing a little bit of a trick here, and it's part of risk mitigation as well. So it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. Be happy if you receive any sort of finding. The other thing is, by involving people in the processes and allowing them to understand the why, you have a significantly better chance of adherence, A, to the standard, and B, they become more personally invested in your business. If the process is something they're involved with, they want it to work. They don't want it to fail, because then that reflects a little bit on them internally. That's a perception. Of course, from an ISO point of view, whoever's written the process, we don't care. We don't care who uses it. We want to see is the process working, and we want to see that it meets that international standard, and we want to offer improvement as well. So hopefully, although it's been a very back to basics review in some respects of how to make 9001 a little bit easier to understand, I would hope that if anyone is struggling, that you can relate that a little bit more to your own lives and see it's not an alien concept whatsoever. You're doing it already. All you need to do is put it into your business. If you're already doing it in your business, work out how that fits to each element of the standard and make the standard work for you. You know, that's the key thing as well. It has to be valuable to you. Don't just implement things because you think you have to. And if you're unsure about what should or should not be in your system, you can always engage with a consultant, or by all means contact our training department. There's a lot of courses available out there for internal auditing or basic understanding of quality management. And ask your auditor as well. Ask them for their opinion. They can't consult with you, but they're always open to having a conversation about what elements of the standard mean and what the assessor is looking for. So hopefully it's been helpful. If it's not, sorry about that. Any questions, I think, is where we're up to.
Yes, we have two questions. So we have the first one from Ali Keane. Is there an average score from an internal audit or external audit? Apologies, external audit.
An average score in terms of what?
There's nothing more further, but what I'll do, I'll let Ali write a response in the chat, so there's an opportunity for them to do that there. But we can move on to the next question, and then to give Ali some time. This is from Nicole Wood. Please, can you explain again the difference between ergonomic and functional?
I can indeed. So top of my head, but I will go back to the slide. So ergonomic is basically to do with, say, if you sat somewhere. There we go. So I was given a very practical example of maybe a seat. If you have an ergonomic seat, it's designed to help your spine be in alignment or something of that nature. So it's a physiological characteristic or something that's related to human safety. Functional, the standard gives it an example as maximum speed of an aircraft. I've given it more of an example of functionality of using a car or a cooker. You know, you might want to consider capacity of how quickly a kettle would boil or something of that nature.
Thank you for that, Jude. I hope Nicole has answered your question. But going back to Ali's point as well, Ali has made the point, they received 5 observations this year, but they received 2 majors and 2 minors last time. What is a good pass or fail?
Oh, that's a brilliant question, Ali. Absolutely fantastic. It depends how mature your system is, and it depends on how many changes you make. So 9001 is all about continuous improvement, and same as people who want to see the systems, particularly your management systems, adapt through time. You can't have one system that just stays static and never ever change, and you should really have a finding just for that, to be honest, if it does for 20 years, because you're not using it. So depending on what stage you're at, if you get a clean sheet, no findings whatsoever, it's unusual. Generally, we will always leave with a couple of observations. Minor non-conformances are very common. They are generally around operations, section 8, whether it's to do with planning or some sort of delivery. Control of documented information is another hot topic. We generally always can find something to do with that. And more, interestingly, it's compliance with management review agenda as well. A major non-conformance, just if you're unsure, anybody, is a statutory or regulatory breach. So or a system has gone completely off kilter. There may have been a complete breakdown within that system. They are actually becoming, since COVID, more common, which is an interesting thing to note, because I think a lot of places have adapted very significantly since COVID, whether it's from home or getting people back into the office, or processes have changed. So it was a predictable thing that we would see an increase in major non-conformances. So it's not a bad thing at all for our clients. It just literally means that maybe you're changing your system, and that's a good thing, a really good thing. In terms of how many averages, I would say probably maybe every 10 or 12 audits, if I had to pick an average, I would probably end up raising a major. They're common. They are common, but they're not bad. They're not bad things. Embrace them. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Jude. We haven't got, yes, actually, Ali wrote it, very helpful. Thank you. I hope that helps. We haven't got any more questions, but there's another opportunity now for anyone else of the 125 attendees to just put a question for Jude. You've got some very lovely comments for yourself, Jude, from Steve and Agnes. So thank you very much for your for the presentation. So no more questions so far, but we'll wait a couple of minutes and any more questions coming through. Oh, we've actually got one question. Yeah, if you can see that, is a Keel. If a non-conformance was already found in the internal audit, can this not be counted in the external audit?
Depends what you've done with it. If, for example, you've raised an internal non-conformance in January 24, and you've got an external audit in February 24, but there's no response, there's no sort of action, we would probably consider raising, depending on the circumstances, maybe an observation at that point. And it depends on the severity of the non-conformance as well. But if you've raised it at the beginning of the year and you get your external audit at the end of the year and it's not been addressed, then yeah, we would likely raise that as a non-conformance. Non-conformances are great. We don't care if you have 300 internal non-conformances. It doesn't indicate whether your system's good or bad. What we want to see is how you manage that non-conformance, that you do something with it. So it would depend really around that, I think. and length of time. Does that help? I hope that helps.
Yes, nothing so far. Just lots of thank yous for yourself, Jude, for the presentation. But we'll wait about another minute or so for more questions, and then we might end the webinar there.
And thank you to everybody who's turned up and listened to me waffle for 45 minutes. It improves my life and my soul, so thank you.
We're just waiting for another minute, and then we might end the webinar. But any more questions, please take the opportunity. Well, I think that's been a minute now. I think it's just very lots of thank yous for Jude, which is excellent. But I think we might end the webinar there. So I just want to say thank you very much, Jude, for your time today, and thank you everyone else for attending.